Today, we're going to be looking at the year in review as such, a year of crisis in the SBC, and not going to be able to hit all of the high points. There's been a lot of chaos, a lot of crisis across the convention, but going to try to hit on a few things. Some of those we've touched on in the days past, some of them not so much. But we're going to try to at least hit some of those and give a little bit of commentary on that. We have a couple of the pastors that have said they're going to join us sometime during the conference or during the live. So we'll try to bring them in as we get them online as such. So let's go ahead and get started. One of the things that has been a real problem for the SBC has been the issue of lawsuits. And the reality is lawsuits have been a real problem for some time, but not in a visible way like it has been for the SBC here of late. Now, I want to show you this on screen. Now, I'm going to enlarge this. Let me get it where you can see it a little bit bigger. These, as of March, now understand, this is December. This is as of March. This list was put out by the SBC litigation site, which is on Twitter. And there are 17, 18, 19, 20 different cases that they're tracking here at this time. Most all of these cases are still active, and this has become to be quite an issue for Southern Baptists without any question, just because they're ending up in the court quite a bit more than what you would like for them to end up in the court. Now, the one that has been receiving a whole lot of press, I guess you could say, well, it depends on what press you're following. Baptist press hasn't given it a lot of airtime. A few of the state papers have, only a few, and then Baptist News Global, maybe a few others at that point from time to time. But that's the Will McCraney versus NAMB case, and that has become a real case over the issue of autonomy, primarily because what NAMB has been arguing is that they have rights and privileges over a state convention, which was in that case the Maryland-Delaware Convention. And it seems like their intent is to try to say they have that kind of control and autonomy regardless. Now, that brings up an issue of what I've been calling connectionalism. Some others have called it similar, but it's of connecting all of our different independent, autonomous operating groups within the Southern Baptist Convention together. So I'm going to play a couple of clips, and I hope the clips work for us this time around, of some of the different things we've covered throughout the year. Here's just one a comment of a recent podcast that we had on the issue of connectionalism. Is bad. That's wrong. But there should not be, like Jim, your church there in Indiana should not be held accountable financially or in any other way because of an abuse situation that happened in Arizona or other types of things. And this kind of connectionalism starts, start putting things together that just in your association of churches, maybe there's 37 churches, a church has some kind of a legal problem that the attorneys now go, hey, they're all connected. Now we're going to sue every one of those that are within that organization as far as association or a state convention or something else. So I think that this has to be stood up against. This has to, and so that means they're going back to the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court again. It's going to be great cost, be a lot of money involved. No question, this is a major issue that Southern Baptists really don't need to be having to face and don't need to be working with. But this has created several things that have happened. This case has been going on for 5 years now, a little over 5 years, I guess now. And the argument has been before the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court now for the second time, Mississippi, the Northern District Court there multiple times now, and was taken to the U.S. Supreme Court by the North American Mission Board. Well, that creates quite a number of problems, as you could imagine. But the problem really is that the North American Mission Board, along with an amicus brief filed by the ERLC, have said that there's a hierarchy involved, that they have basically authoritative control over these other entities because they have a partnership. Now, one of the things that has sprung up most recently that we have seen is the North American Mission Board has been arguing that the strategic agreements, the partnership agreements, I think they just call them strategic partnership agreement, SPA, that have been in place for quite some time. The name was changed some time back when North American Mission Board came under Kevin Ezel's leadership. But the reality is these kind of agreements have been around for a long time. It's an agreement on we're going to share money. We're going to send to you cooperative program dollars that have been given through the gifts of churches all across our country, and church members have been giving sacrificially, and so that mission money goes to the executive committee and then is dispersed, and some of that goes to North American Mission Board. Then some of that is given back into the states to support different types of ministries and missions. And especially in non-South states, this is a huge piece of their budget normally. And the agreement basically is in place to say, hey, we're going to help cooperate in funding certain positions for evangelism or missions leader or that kind of thing, or particular different kinds of strategy in church planting and evangelism, whatever it may be. Well, the North American Mission Board now is arguing because they have that agreement. They're saying it's a contractual agreement that gives them authority to make decisions over that entity or that other group that they have an agreement with, which basically means, if you just break it down, that basically means that if the North American Mission Board has any kind of agreement with your association, your church, you're partnering in any way, shape, or form, that they are saying that they have authoritative control of some sort over what you do. And that comes to be a real problem. I'll link some of the podcasts that we're kind of showing clips from in the description below. But the reality is, one of the things that we have already seen is, man, if this gets down to a individual level, to local churches, which it very easily could, if it gets down to individual churches, well, then the North American Mission Board can make a decision. Hey, we don't like something your pastor did, or your pastor standing up against something we're doing, or he's disagreed with something, and we're going to basically impose whatever we want to impose at that time. And that's not a good thing at all. In fact, one of the articles that I'll link for you in the description is from Baptist News Global. Mark Wingfield wrote a really good article. He gives an illustration where he makes this very practical for a local church situation if this were to move forward. So the case with Will McRaney is very critical, in that McRaney is arguing, look, churches are autonomous. The North American Mission Board should not have that ability. The other piece of that case that has not yet come before a court, as far as the evidence, depositions were taken, but it hadn't come before the court, and that is the simple fact that there was torturous interference. This has happened not only to Will McRaney, but it's happened to many other individuals that we're aware of now, and that is where the North American Mission Board has pursued getting that individual removed from speaking on a conference platform, or a particular job that they are being recruited for, or in dialogue with, things of that sort. And all of those things, most Christians, I think, in the local church would say, yeah, that's inappropriate. After, and this happened for McRaney, well, for me also, but it happened after they had left the position that they were in at their state convention. And now Kevin Ezel specifically, but the North American Mission Board represented by Kevin Ezel, have made phone calls and that kind of thing, trying to say, look, they need to be removed from your list of even considering somebody at that point. And that's just not a good thing at all at that point. We also had a situation this last year that came up related to what's being called the Law Amendment, the Mike Law Amendment. And the Mike Law Amendment basically is about women in ministry, and stating that the Bible states that the women in ministry shouldn't, basically the word pastor is what's being dialogued over. And so this particular argument Rick Warren was the one that really elevated it. He ordained 3 women in a very public manner, was spoken very publicly about it. It ended up at the convention this last year in June. Basically a battle ended up happening on the floor. And it was a battle between Albert Mohler and Rick Warren, basically, as they tried to state their case. The law amendment then came into place. And when that law amendment came into place, it has to be approved twice. It's a change to the Constitution. And I wished I'd remembered to clip that and bring it up so you could see it. But it's just a real simple statement that says that a woman can't serve as a pastor in any way, shape, or form. Basically, that's not the language. It's better worded than that for sure. But the whole idea, the concept is that a woman can't be called a pastor in any role in the church. So someone who in previous years, we may have called them a children's minister, a children's director, youth minister, youth director, whatever. Many churches have taken on in the at least the last decade, but in the last years, calling all the staff members on their staff pastors. So a children's minister, who oftentimes would be a female, would be called a children's minister in the past, and now are being called a children's pastor. Well, I would think most folks can look and see what that individual does. There's a lot of pastoral role involved in that, pastoral gifts, I guess you could say at that point. And so that individual, male or female, is ministering to the children, ministering to the families, ministering in crisis, all those kind of things, all very pastoral type things. But the argument is, can a church have that kind of person and call them a pastor rather than just call them a minister or a director? Some are throwing their hands up going, look, it's not that big a deal. We just call them a minister or director. They're still doing the job. Others are digging their heels in like Rick Warren did and saying, no, we want to call them a pastor. That's the skills and the gifts that they're using, and that's what's happening. Furtick also removed Elevation Church. They withdrew themselves because they have the same on their staff. And now many are very concerned about what may happen among other groups. For instance, among African-American churches, oftentimes they have women who are called elders, often called pastors, depending on their role. That has been very cultural for many of those churches for a long, long time. So now the question is, if the amendment passes and is voted on successfully the second time, are we going to now send our credentials committee on a search looking to remove all of those churches? Anyone who has the word pastor labeled to attaching to a woman's responsibilities at all. So it's unsolved at this point without any question as far as that being remedied for sure, without a doubt. Now, let's look at a couple of other things that have come up in the last year. We have seen situations that have happened in the last year relative to the North American Mission Board. Chuck Kelly published a book that was pretty widely distributed during the last year. We did an interview with him also, and he had these comments about his efforts to get from the North American Mission Board numbers that related to church plants, the number of church plants, just the issue of transparency. So let's look and listen to what he had to say.
About the survival rate of our church plants at the end of 4 years, and it's 80%. That's wonderful. I'm thrilled about that. That's great.
Right,
what we don't get is beyond 4 years. Most of the subsidy that happens in church planting happens for 4 years. Now, once you hit that 5th year, you're beginning to get out of subsidy. And I was able to get one piece of information about one class of church planters 5 years after they started their church. And that survival rate between year 4 and year 5 went from 80% to 60%. And the cooperative program participation rate went to 25% after 5 years were given the cooperative program.
Well, those numbers are pretty amazing without any doubt. Whoops, hang on a second. Sorry about that. I clicked on the wrong button. It's a problem with doing it yourself. But anyway, those numbers are pretty astounding. And the problem is Chuck Kelly, other individuals, some press have reported they've done the same thing, trying to get actual numbers. State executive directors have done the same thing, trying to say, hey, look, how many people are you funding in my state? How many people are you funding in our area? Now, I will tell you, when I was associational missionary from 2001 to 2010, we always knew that. We knew what planters were being funded and how much money they were getting every month. Our state convention, who obviously was in the partnership, they were in partnership with the North American Mission Board about that funding, and they would make sure that we knew that. That was no secret. There was nothing hidden about that. We knew exactly how much they were getting. In fact, we could find out for the whole state, our entire state, exactly how many church planters were funded, where they were, exactly what their location was, all of that kind of thing. And now the North American Mission Board is no longer providing that for us, which seems to be a real problem because they are, again, hiding, not being transparent, we'll say. So speaking of not being transparent, let's go ahead and take that one step further. Let me pull back up here the video that I was about to show. And let's see, I may need to back that up a second. Yep, hang on just a second. We'll back that up. And this is from a couple of years ago. Hang on, we'll stop that.
My name is Joey Huffstedler. I'm the senior.
And then we'll walk right into this.
Kevin, thank you so much. Are there any questions for Kevin Ezell and the North American Mission Board? Now is the time. 4A.
Yes, Dr. Ezell, my name is Joey Huffstedler. I'm the senior pastor and messenger from Poplar Grove Baptist Church outside of Trenton, Tennessee. First of all, great report. I've been a supporter of missions my whole life. And just several months ago, I began to hear someone saying some things that didn't paint the North American Mission Board in the greatest light. So I set out to disprove him. That's turned out to be harder than I thought it would be. Roman numeral 14, paragraph 2 of our governing documents, business and financial plan, says members of cooperating Southern Baptist churches shall have access to information from the records of Southern Baptist Convention entities regarding income, expenditures, debts, reserves, operating balances, and salary structures. I spent the better part of 3 months requesting the salary structure for the North American Mission Board from trustees and have yet to receive that information and have been told I should ask that question from the floor. So here I am asking, will you abide with our business and financial plan and allow me to see the salary structure? And if so, when can we set that up?
Yes, sir. Appreciate you asking that question. Our staff has spent many hours talking with you, our chairman of trustees, our chairman of our finance committee. We do provide our structures. But when it comes to something of salary related, Mr. President, I'd like to defer to my chairman of our trustees so he can speak directly to this messenger.
And I won't continue to play that out. The chairman of trustees basically just gave a non-answer, just kind of danced around it. But what happened is, and this is what I want to show you this is from the NAMB whistleblower, NAMBwhistleblower.com, I believe. And they have sent out some emails. And after that, sometime later, that very pastor was in a meeting with the president of the Southern Baptist, not Southern Baptist Convention, the president of the North American Mission Board. And this is what he had to say. That same pastor was there. And he basically said, many of our West Tennessee pastors saw the true Kevin Ezell last fall when he spoke at our West Tennessee Pastors Conference. He was there mainly to address the issue with Joey Huffstedler. I'm not sure I said that name right, but that was who you saw in the video, asking him for NAMB salary structures. Ezell sat right there and in a boastful way told us that 80% of his funding was given by the top 11% of SBC churches. He said, keep your money I don't care. And I believe he meant it. What brass to sit there and tell the Gibson County pastors and several others that our small gifts matter not to him. Now, to me, that was just astounding to see that he would say something of that sort. Quite astounding, to say the least. And it continues to feed into this whole issue of transparency and the lack of transparency, not wanting to be transparent at all. We had another podcast where this was dealt with, as it's been dealt with many different times now at this point. And let me show you another quick video from just a clip where NAMB secrets were being talked about, or the unveiling, trying to get the unveiling of these secrets as they happen. So let's take this and I'll comment on the other side.
Scott Kelly, retired president of New Orleans Seminary, wrote a book in which he revealed that he tried to get numbers out of him. $80 million.
And some would say, throw your hands, walk away.
How many church plants are actually being funded? They approved about 270. They spent $80 million. We start doing the math on that. The math doesn't look too good. They would if the number was good, but the number apparently isn't good.
There's a final comment from James. Says they can't be transparent because they have things to hide. Why should they change? Quite amazing that this kind of comment was being made, and that's kind of seems to be the attitude of those who are kind of in the elite leadership, I guess you would say, of the Southern Baptist Convention. It goes back to what was filed with the ERLC, with the North American Mission Board, when they went before the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court in the McRaney case, and then again to the Supreme Court when they began talking about a hierarchy. Here's a quick clip from Pastor Keith Stell out of Georgia.
Very, very simple for me. We are not a denomination. We are a convention of churches, and that there is no top-down authority amongst our churches. The implication that there is a hierarchical relationship between executive committee and other entities and the local church, and that has to be clarified.
And those actual words were used in the original amicus brief that the ERLC signed on to, that was going to the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court. Well, actually did, and eventually was apologized for, and a correction was sent to the court, but it was way after everything had been done. Quite amazing that we've seen the kind of things that we've seen. There have been several amicus briefs. We don't have time to get into it fully, but I know there's been quite a bit of upheaval from the executive committee having filed an amicus brief in an abuse case in Kentucky. We did do a podcast on some of that as well. And then the Northwest Baptist Convention, under Randy Adams' leadership, they paid for and filed an amicus brief with the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court, saying that what was being argued by the North American Mission Board in the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court against McRaney was not in line with the polity historically of what Southern Baptists are, as far as all of our organizations being autonomous. Well, another one of the big things that happened during the course of this year happened with the executive committee. And at the executive committee level, we had a problem with Dr. Willie, well, he wasn't actually a doctor, we found out, but we thought it was Dr. Willie McLaren. He resigned after admitting he had falsified his resume. He had been hired by multiple churches, the Tennessee Baptist Convention, and then the executive committee to serve in another role, but then had been basically promoted to the interim president during the in-between time after Ronnie Floyd had resigned. And it was discovered after doing a more extensive background check to consider him, or they were considering him to be the normal, come out of the interim position and be the full-time executive committee president and CEO. And that just blew up when they discovered this. He ended up resigning under pressure. But this hasn't been the only issue that has happened with our executive committee during the course of this year. In fact, if you'll remember back, they had brought a member. This is prior to discovering this about Willie McLaren, but they had brought Jared, I'm going blank. I should have written it down. anyway, he's a pastor and pretty well known among many. He was serving as the chairperson of the search team at that time, and as they got close to making a final decision about who to present, they did end up deciding to present him, and he resigned from the chair of the search team. They presented him. Then once his name was presented, there was all kinds of pushback and all kinds of blow up. They had an executive committee meeting where the trustee meeting, not the executive committee, the trustees of the executive committee met in Dallas. And in fact, Jared Wellman, that's it. Jared Wellman and his family were all there. They were brought in to be able to visit with the executive committee trustees. And there are photographs that out there of him and his family just waiting in a conference room, waiting to be told what the outcome is. Well, as it ended up, that all blew up and that passed aside. And then we find out about this interim situation with McLaren. So there's been all kinds of problems. And so a lot of the questions that have come up have been, man, what has been our vetting process? Why has this happened? Why have we not been more clear about this kind of thing? And some of the trustees have been speaking up about why has this not been identified as a problem earlier? And I believe now they have put in place some much better processes at that point. The questionnaire that has been distributed now to prospective individuals who would be considered for that role. Those have been received back. My understanding is I received word just a couple of days ago that they have identified who the new candidate is going to be. That has not been publicly announced. I have not been able to independently confirm that. So still waiting to hear that, but it's someone who, well, I won't say anything more. I could say enough to give you hints and you'd probably figure it out, but I'm not going to do that at this point. The reality is, I think that's a done deal at this point as far as that search team. Now it still has to be brought to the trustees. I don't know if they're going to wait till after the Christmas season, maybe wait until the February trustee meeting. I'm not sure what they're going to do. I didn't get any information about that at all, but that is a huge thing. And there seems to have been lots of issues that have been going on there as well. And that's just a bit of a problem and has been for those across the board in Southern Baptist. There have been a number of other things that have come up. The finances have been a problem with the executive committee. We spoke to Mike Stone sometime back. Here's what Mike Stone had to say prior to this last year's SBC convention about what he had discovered about basically what was happening at the executive committee. A lot of this is relative to the sexual abuse situations and the lawsuits and the defense and all this kind of stuff happening with the Guidestone Solutions and a lot of other things. But listen to what he has to say.
The SBC Executive Committee is even talking about the sale of real property and the liquidation of assets to pay its bills. That represents an existential crisis and an existential financial threat. Add to that the fact that we're looking at guidepost solutions again, and that the staunchest advocate and defender of that position was this current president. I believe that we need a president who will raise these issues, who will actually defend our Southern Baptist Convention. But I believe that we have got to get back on a pathway of sustainability.
Stone identifies these things as things that have really been an issue because of all of the financial burdens that have caused. Now, let me bring in with us real quick Jim Bohr. He's pastor at Hope Community Church there just outside of Indianapolis, Indiana. Jim, good to have you joining us today. We've hit on a couple of different things, Jim, but you were in just in time to be able to hear some of what Stone was saying about the financial transparency. Give us some of your thoughts as a local pastor about your concerns, as a cooperating church with a cooperative program, and what you're hearing about all of the financial issues that are happening.
It's not fun to hear it. You want to hear stability. You want to hear transparency. You want to hear, hey, we're doing great, and we're on board. We're supporting you guys. You're working with us. We're a team. We're partnering, not bossing or demanding or hiding or whatever else, how you want to describe it. Now, all those things could not be, they could be right, could be wrong, but without transparency, without communication, there's no way to feel confident and build the trust, the confidence, with faith in our institutions. And that's what it really comes down to. We have to have faith in each other. We have to trust each other. And we have to have a common core of values that say, hey, we trust the local church. We trust our state. We trust NAMB. And we trust sharing our vision together. And that's where I think the struggle comes. What is the vision? Church planting. What does that mean? How many church plants? And, are we doing well? Are we not doing well? Are we missing the boat somehow? How can we better support you? How does the state, local people communicate the needs on the ground? Or is it all simply coming from the federal headship? It really seems to me to be like the whole gambit we've seen in our culture, states' rights versus federal rights and local government. And it seems as if right now we're dealing with this transition to where the federal side of SBC, the executive committee, NAMB, calls all the shots and says, guys, either I'm along for the ride and just sit back, keep your mouth shut. And we don't want your input, we're doing our own thing. And by the way, because you don't give enough money, you're not the top 1%, top 10%.
Yeah.
We really need you anyway.
Yeah. How in the world do you justify that? That makes no sense at all. Well, and I had a pastor call me the other day, and his comment, and I hate to even make this comparison, but it's kind of true. His comment was basically, it's like a bunch of Democrats and Republicans. He said everybody's trying to control and this, that, and the other, and then look at all the issues that have happened around the Speaker of the House and trying to get a speaker. And, we were just talking about the executive committees, trying to get a president. Well, now we've been through multiple individuals doing that. I've got a hint about who the new one is going to be, at least who they're going to present. But I mean, my soul, why is this such an issue? And it seems like it's got to be rubber stamped by a certain group of people before it's even going to be presented. And that really does. I mean, it sounds like all of the, what's a good word? The word comes to mind is piddly, but that's not really a good word. All the piddly things that are thought about sometimes, when you're looking at the congressional and the Senate type of things that are being bickered about, sometimes they're just irrational. They make no sense, but they all come in within all these different power groups. And that seems like what's present within the Southern Baptist Convention. And I understand it's a huge organization. And anytime you have a large organization, there's always system issues and systematic kind of problems at times and stuff. But we need leadership that's going to be concerned about the people in the pew, as we would say, the people in the local church, and not just kind of lining their own pockets or the organization that they're in. It just makes no sense.
No, I don't know.
Just makes no sense.
Consider they're lining their pocket. There's something about power. Just that nature of power.
Yeah.
And then you have the Overton window. Like you can go into the sex scandal, who got to decide how to handle that. You go into who's being nominated to be the executive of any organization. Well, he has to have this and this and this and this, and has to know so and so on. But we're not going to bother doing a full background check because he knows people. So you could see that the good old boy network really was the CV. It really wasn't a CV of, does this person have a business background? Do they have the acumen to work with multiple entities? Have they shown themselves faithful in other areas? And are we recruiting the best rather than just promoting within our own circle of trust and getting an echo chamber that's not responding to the actual boots on the ground needs? And that's my concern. Is at one level, you made the comment of being government. It's a lot easier when you have kind of a top-down leadership to get things done. But what's getting done? And if it's getting done and you're doing it transparently and you're inviting input, there probably wouldn't be this level of confusion. You at least have enough people, like that one pastor, who was it that stood up at the convention saying, hey, I wanted to defend NAMB. And as I tried to get the facts, I'm finding it harder and harder. Well, why? And
we showed that clip just a minute ago before you jumped on, because that's exactly that transparency, the lack of transparency. Yep, you're right. Hitting the nail on the head without any doubt.
And if the
Yeah.
culture
Yeah.
is tough, if we're having difficulty as a denomination reaching people for Christ, that should also lead to reflection of, hey, how are we structuring our churches? How are we structuring our missions? And how are we envisioning mega church models that are built off the American corporation model? And is that effective
Yeah.
anymore? Are we really training our pastors to answer the questions people have as opposed to dogma? And how can we get beyond this point of, on our knees, praying as a convention, as like-minded believers who love the Lord, love the Bible more than we love, being a denomination. I love what
Yeah.
SBC has done, but ultimately we didn't exist when Christ came around, and the
Right.
apostles did just fine without us. So we
Yeah.
need to say, are
Yeah.
we aligned with Christ and the apostles in our mission, or are we more aligned with corporate mentality and how to manage money and boss people around?
Right. Well, and I'm going to pull this back up real quick. We looked at this a little bit a while ago, but this is just a list of lawsuits right now that
Mhm.
Southern Baptists are involved in. Most of us hadn't seen that list. Now,
Mhm.
this list is several months old. I mentioned earlier, but these are the major lawsuits right now that are facing Southern Baptists. And when we're talking about financial transparency, we're talking about all of those kind of things, and the lack of transparency to our Southern Baptist folks. And then we are trying to connect everything that's happening among Southern Baptists, and NAMB is making those kind of arguments using the term hierarchy and those kind of things, as they have done over the last several years, not just this last year. It's been done again this last year, but that starts tying together all of this kind of thing. And there's just something not right about that when you start looking at that and thinking, especially when you start looking at all of these abuse cases, and several of those there were abuse cases that the Southern Baptist Convention now has been involved in. Let me go to one of the comments that Mike Stone made a while back talking about the sexual abuse case. And let's just talk about this just for a minute. There are a number of different things, but he made this comment earlier. Let's listen into what he had to say.
Fiber of sexual abuse, you could call me an awful lot of things that would not be any more wicked, any more vile, or any more untrue. We have got to be able to have an honest, Christ-like, brother-honoring, sister-honoring discussion without throwing these needless jabs at one another that you don't care about sexual abuse. So I think one of the things we've got to do, and from the office of president, I would seek to do this, is to tone down the rhetoric and to just get the best ideas to the table without name calling and without impugning someone's character or their integrity.
Yeah.
And that it's just, I don't know. Go ahead. You were going to make a comment.
No, he's on track there. The one thing I grew up Roman Catholic, and I was just dismayed when we saw priests who had committed heinous crimes not facing the law and not facing consequences, simply being moved to another parish where people didn't know to watch out. There wasn't even any chatter about the guy being dangerous, and he's able to perpetrate again. And we, on the other hand, we're autonomous, but we become aware of certain patterns of guys. I'm sure there's women out there too, but it's mainly men that do this stuff at a higher level, and pastors having all that authority. And we had a list, and we did know of certain guys. Now, again, every institution has abuse. The school system has a greater instance of abuse than Southern Baptist churches do. The news media is going to eat that alive. We're trying to protect our name, but the way to protect our name was to go, hey, we are going to deal with it openly and honestly. And when we find malfeasance, we find criminal activity, we're going to say, police, get involved. Not let's get a bunch of men around here and cover it up or talk the person down, and let the police do their job, and hopefully truth comes out. And if it's a false accusation, okay. But man, if it's not, we can't be involved in this stuff. It's sickening. People sin. This is the most heinous sin in my mind. Is any time, like Christ said, you better tie a millstone on your neck if you abuse a little one. He did have a hierarchy of temporal sin. Maybe all sin comes from God. We all need to repent. But there's temporal sin that God says, hey, you commit murder. There's a time where you die. You harm a little kid, you might as well drown yourself. If you hurt an adult in the Old Testament, you arm for arm, basically. Let's keep it there. With hurting a kid, he didn't give any qualification how you hurt a kid. He's like, you're gone. Even Jesus said that.
Yeah.
So why are we playing around with that sort of fire? Ugh.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And some of, and again, you and I aren't lawyers. I mean,
Right.
Just straight out, we're not lawyers.
No.
But some of the legal things, at least from an outsider's perspective, makes very little sense. Of course, I know I don't have all the information, but when you remove the protections that are provided by the law for your organization, within the organization, and you remove those protections, then you really opened up a whole lot more than a can of worms at that point. And that's a real issue. And so, yeah.
But why'd that happen?
Why do you think?
Trust. Because the people in the pews could smell something was foul. The people at the convention said, hey, there's answers here that we're not getting, that you guys aren't clear. Just recently, what do we have? 3 Ivy League presidents stand before Congress. Different issue.
Yep.
Was about not hate speech, but violent speech. And the question was, when does the call for the extermination, a genocide of a whole group of people, violate your policies? And they gave all these legalistic answers that the answer simply was, yeah, this call for, I don't like how the 2-state solution is going. That's different. When you say from sea to sea to Jordan, get rid of all of them. That's a call for extermination.
Right.
That is wrong.
Yeah.
And they couldn't answer the question. And when our leaders weren't answering the question of, hey, we're going to take this seriously. Oh, well, we can't do anything about it. Nothing can be done. Nothing can be done. No one knows. I don't know. How do you not hear those comments and go, yeah, that's a no answer. That's a nothing burger. There's something cooking in the kitchen.
Yeah.
We can smell it. And if you guys aren't going to be straightforward, we don't trust you. So therefore, we want to have whoever asks questions full access to you, which is sad. Had they done and opened it up to a legitimate investigation, and again, who was in charge of it at the time saying no? We found out he was somebody who had credible concerns of using his position in a way that exploited someone's sexuality. I mean, it's
it's crazy. Yeah,
the instinct in the pews.
Well, that's
right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and a perfect segue right into this next clip I was going to show real quickly. This is Keith Stell in one of our previous conversations. But I want you to respond to what he says relative to not only the sexual abuse issues that we're dealing with, but all of the issues related, Willie McLaren and the falsifying his resume and all these other things that have happened with the executive committee. We've got the issues happening at the North American Mission Board, all these other things that we've been highlighting and things that have continued to plague us throughout the last year. Comment on the other side of this.
Then I read the details of what Randy had written, and I thought I can come on board with this. There's an intentionality to preserving the basis of who we are as a convention of independent, autonomous churches. And let's get our wording correct. Words matter, Bobby.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And, that is expressly why I was willing to affix my name to this.
Your thoughts, Jim?
Yeah, Keith is just a great guy, man. He just hits the nail on the head. That is one of our distinctives, the autonomy of the local church. So we can't have corruption come from the top down and hammered into us by change of core theology. We can't have bishops and priests slapped into a local church that we don't want because, hey, this guy's questionable. This person's means questionable. Also, you don't have, well, the church can push this person up into some other leadership spot too, because, hey, we have the control over that. It has to be a cooperative effort of checks and balances. You know, that it's a beautiful system when we function in faith and in trust. But once we start twisting arms, we're basically, why not be, you know, Presbyterian Baptist? Why not be Catholic Baptist? Why not be, you know, Methodo Baptist? I mean, we're starting to combine part of the Calvinistic Reformed hierarchy that Baptists tend to reject from the very beginning. We were not Presbyterians, we were not Methodists, we were not Lutherans, because we saw.
Yeah, you're making up new names.
Yeah. Well, we're going to call it,
We've got all
because
kinds of new names. Well,
what
but
are
yeah,
you gonna do?
no. You make a good point. And the comment Keith was making was about signing on to the Amicus Brief that Northwest Convention. We talked about this just a little bit ago, but signing on to that to say, hey, look, this is who we are as Southern Baptists, not the way it sounds like from NAMB's language and the way they've been using it. And that is true. And from the basic person who's in the pew of a Southern Baptist church, who's sitting there, if they have any history at all with Southern Baptists, they know and understand that. They get that. And there's this attempt to try to start connecting everything. And if so, that brings into play ascending, descending liability and all kinds of other things that potentially could be a hindrance. And there's going to be a lot of churches just opening the door and leaving. You know, I mean, some already are, but they're just going to be more and more that are going to say, look, if you guys aren't going to stand up for the autonomy that Southern Baptists have had basically from the very beginning, what's there to say you're Southern Baptist for? Why say you're cooperating at all? You know,
how many churches
doesn't make any sense.
How many churches have we grown by in the past few years that came out of a more independent Baptist background going, hey, I like the idea of being autonomous and the benefit of working with a larger group of other Christians to do missions, connect with missionaries across the seas, South America, in Asia, in Africa, and you know, Western Europe. And this is great because now I have more missions to funnel time to and energy to, and we're still independent. How many have come on because of that? And then now they're going to say, whoa, you know, how much growth is really happening that's organic versus that? I think there's a lot more churches being added on by that, from that other field of independence, that are going to back out and not cooperate anymore. It's about, to me, it's about cooperation. But I also get the comment, if Giselle was right, what, 90%, 80% of the funding comes from 11% of the churches?
Yeah.
And that would be what? How many? What, a couple 100,000? How many churches would that be? You know, just keep them happy.
I don't know the exact number on that at all, but you're exactly right. And you know, the sad part is, I was listening to a podcast on church revitalization the other day when I was driving, and I don't know either one of the two guys. I listen to this podcast just periodically when, you know, there's a topic that looks of interest, and I was just listening, and right in the middle of it, they were talking about connections and pastors having good relationships with other pastors who they can talk to, and, you know, that kind of thing. Some things you can't talk to your church members about, all that kind of thing. And this guy out of the blue said, look, find yourself a Southern Baptist Association. He said, find yourself a Southern Baptist. He said, I'm not Southern Baptist. He said, but I'm a part of a Southern Baptist Association of pastors. They meet on a regular basis. He said, let me tell you one thing about Southern Baptists. He said, I can promise you, wherever you are, if you need some fellowship, you go and you be a part of that, and they will take you in warmly. They will share with you. They will encourage you. They will wrap their arms around you. See, and when I thought of that and I heard him say that, I thought, okay, this is just a guy, you know, he's a local pastor of a church, but it's a non-denom church. And he's saying, look, I'm recommending Southern Baptists because on the grassroots level, they're just great folks. Yeah. And that is not being represented when you see in, you know, the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post or somewhere else, all this kind of stuff, like the thing, you know, we posted a while ago with Willie McLaren. Well, man, that doesn't look good. You see all the stuff that's hit the media about the North American Mission Board and others, that, you know, it doesn't appear well at all, and it just reflects us poorly. Okay, we're rambling. Any other main or big things that you think back on this last year that really stand out? We talked about the law amendment that's still coming up, about the women pastors, and anything else that kind of jumps out to you that kind of has gotten in your craw over this last year?
It doesn't get my craw in the sense of like it doesn't have rent free in my brain. I don't really consider it very often because
Right.
it's about local issues. I am heartbroken though, as I've been thinking about seminary and being trained. We need to do discipleship, we hear that all the time. But what I think the other problem in our denomination is really discipleship in the sense of just following Christ and being loving and kind and transparent and trusting each other. Like, Paul, I'm
Right.
going on a
Yeah.
mission trip. You gave out of your need, and they're all supportive and they prayed for him and they had pain for him. I'm not sure if I see that being the main ethic. I think corporate mentality is getting a hold of us because the entities are so big, and
Right.
we're
Yeah.
promoting pastors whose hearts are not really corporate mentality. And then we get behind the eight ball, leaders behind the eight ball, like Willie McLaren. Everything I heard about the
Yeah,
guy,
sure.
it was a great guy. I mean, he's a great guy, and everybody loved him. He could preach well and stuff. And he felt he had to pad his resume to ascend the hierarchy, or somebody gave that impression. Why does he have to have a resume of these denominational or these seminaries to have executive committee leadership if he's proven himself on the field?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't. That just breaks my heart that
Yeah.
this guy who seems to probably take away that aspect of him, but it probably does lead to other questions. But man, he seemed to have all the gifts, and now he's not the guy.
Well, and I knew Willie from years ago when he was at the Tennessee State Convention and I was in Michigan, and we were in some conferences together and whatever. And so on a personal level, I'd known him, and he was a great guy,
Right.
a wonderful speaker, a wonderful preacher, very motivational. I've been in lots of other meetings and stuff with him over the years. And I can assure you, those people in Tennessee who had worked with him when he was on staff there, working with all the things he was doing, were just flabbergasted because the evidence of what he was doing was so clear and so evident and so strong, that it's like, why did he have to say all this? Why did he give the illusion that these are things that were there?
What's the pressure?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's sad that he kind of felt like maybe he had to, and that's not right. Yeah.
That's what I'm questioning. Like, why is it NAMB and Kevin Ezell like, oh, we have to hide salaries? Well, we don't need to know each person's salary, but the idea was, what are we putting into salaries? What are we putting into actual physical locations? What's the numbers coming out right now? What's the long-term growth? Where are we really at? And what are we giving? And how can we get more on board? And what you find is when people see openness and transparency and even see struggles, but they see people addressing them from leadership position, they do tend to get on board. But it's like all about presentation. The Apple, like almost like being an Apple CEO. Got to make the new shiny iPhone look good so people like us and have giveaways and everything. And that's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But when it's all that and we're not having substance, you start going, why are we so caught up in the image? That's the thing. I guess it comes down to what it does kind of break my heart is the image. We seem to be projecting image over substance.
Oh yeah, no question.
Yeah.
Well, the reality is 2023 has been another year in crisis in a lot of ways, and that's kind of a sad thing without a doubt. So our year in review kind of has to look back on that. There are a lot of positive things and good things happening with Southern Baptist, and hopefully we'll see more positive things happen in 2024.
Thank you, everybody.